We will call K-12 Subcommittee to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Representative Carringer. Representative Cassada. Chairman Sapicki. Here. Representative Clemens. Here. Representative Hurt. Representative Love. Here. Chairman Reagan. Here. Chairman White.
Here.
Chairman Haston. Here. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Are there any personal orders before we begin? Seeing none, we will jump right into the calendar. Number one on the calendar is House Bill 332. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Properly motioned. Representative Alexander, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chairman and committee. Thank you for allowing me this time to come in front of you. This bill, I couldn't be more proud to carry. Growing up on a dairy farm in East Tennessee where we had registered Holsteins, my father took us on the show circuit, and we started at the Appalachian Fair, and we went through every county fair from here to Memphis, from East Tennessee to Memphis. Sometimes we missed as many as 3 weeks of school. Back then, the school excused you from those absences, and somewhere along the way, we've lost that ability. This bill would allow 4-H students, when they are out of school for a 4-H activity, to be excused from class, to be allowed to make up their work, for it not to be held against them. It would be no different than them going on an educational field trip, for example. That basically sums up the bill. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to pose them.
Thank you for that. You've heard the explanation. Any questions for the sponsor? Representative Clemens, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there I feel like I recall a similar bill to this in previous years or something along these lines, and I remember there being a cap on the number of days. Is there, I didn't see a cap on the number of days in this legislation. Is there, or am I missing something?
As far as I know, there is no cap, but I can check that out for you, Representative Clemens. Sorry. Chairman, I didn't acknowledge you
fine.
first.
Go ahead.
Excuse me.
Go ahead, Representative.
But I do know you are not allowed to be out for TCAPs or anything like that. You're not excused for anything like that.
Representative Clemens.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the spirit of the legislation. I certainly understand the value of the 4-H, but would you be amenable at some point if there was a cap added to this at some point in the process?
Representative Alexander.
I would need to go back to UT and talk to them about that before I agree to that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
Any other questions for the sponsor? Chairman Watt.
Not a question, but a comment. I'll be glad when we open back up again, because when the 4-H young people came up here, the finest young people in the world.
They are. And by the way, they're watching today to learn how civic process is done. So
wow.
Please give a shout out to them.
Hello. Glad you're here. You're fine young people. Thank you.
Chairman Sapicki, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I too share the same concerns as my colleague from Nashville. There was language in the bill about 10 excused absences, and if this bill does move forward, I would ask you to be prepared at the full committee to be able to answer that question. Is this replacing the principal's ability to give 10 absences, or are the 10 absences still in there? That'd be really important at the full committee.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll be voting on House Bill 332. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. On to full education. Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to House Bill number 2 on the calendar, House Bill 925 by Representative Ogles. Do I have a motion? Motion. Properly motion. Representative Ogles, you are recognized, and I believe you have an amendment.
Zero 4200.
All right, properly motion. You are recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Chairman, members of committees. This bill would allow LEAs, when they submit their mitigation plans for the state to include their cyber security plans with that. Right now, those local cybersecurity plans are not held confidential and could be retrieved through parties who requested Freedom of Information Acts at the local level. So by including this with the template for the minimal requirements that they submit to the state with their security plans, that would protect them from divulging confidential security plans that they've created for their district. With that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you. You've heard the explanation of the amendment. Does anybody have any questions on the amendment? Question has been called. Seeing no objections, we'll be voting on adopting Amendment 4200. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, say no. Amendment is adopted. We're back on the bill as amended. Do you have anything further you want to add to your explanation? You've heard the explanation of the bill as well. Does anybody have any questions for the sponsor about the bill? Seeing none, we'll be voting on House Bill 925. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. On to full education.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee.
Item number 3, House Bill 324, has been rolled a week at sponsor's request. Item number 4, 219, has been rolled a week per sponsor request, and that brings us to item number 4, which we are going to roll to the heel for now. That brings us to item number, I'm sorry, I've skipped one. My apologies. Item number 5, House Bill 165 by Representative Cooper. We are going to roll that to the heel, as well as number 6 right now, also rolled to the heel. Item number 7, House Bill 1271. Do I have a motion? Motion. Probably motion. Representative Garrett, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. I'm honored to be here in front of you. It's my first bill through education, so I hope to be successful to travel this through. This bill was brought to me by a constituent. He brought to my attention that he participates in the Individualized Education Account Program, and it is a school choice program for eligible students with disabilities. This legislation was passed in 2015. There are currently several students that use this and utilize this program as part of our services. However, this particular constituent said that he is getting taxed for income for using this incentive. So what my bill does is makes this clear that Tennessee does not want this to be income for tax purposes. So we hope that the IRS will listen and not tax our particular constituent and our constituents that use this benefit from our state as income. So that's what this bill does. Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that explanation. Does anybody have any questions for the sponsor? Chairman Sapicki, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So for clarification on the bill, and we do get into the weeds in this sometimes, we are currently taxing this individual education account.
Representative Garrett, you're recognized.
Tennessee is not, but the IRS is actually treating this as income and says this is taxable income to this particular individual. So we're trying to tell the IRS that we do not want this to be taxable. Of course, we can't make them do this, but this is the first step to say that we as Tennesseans do not want this to be considered income for the purposes of taxation.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Sapicki.
So following up, so currently these individual savings accounts are not being taxed in the state of Tennessee. That's why the bill is not significant. But federally, they are subject to taxation. So we're by no means saying that we're telling people not to pay their federal taxes on this. This is just the first step to get them across the finish line where hopefully they won't have to in the future.
Representative Garrett.
You're exactly right, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that clarification.
Representative Love, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was part of what my question was going to be about. The strength to say it should not be taxed at the state level. Right. I'm saying that's. I'm wondering I'm trying to figure out how we make it law that it should not be taxed here. It's not being taxed here. Law versus resolution. Because I know sometimes we do send resolutions to the federal government. And I guess I'm trying to figure out the question here to what the right way to ask it. I suppose this is a good step to take so that if we ever do have a state income tax, then we would have already made provisions for this.
Representative Garrett?
Representative Love, that's actually never something I thought about, but you're absolutely right. And I would say, again, if we ever did institute an state income tax, this would certainly prevent that benefit from being taxed, which I would, again, wholeheartedly support. But we obviously cannot tell, and this bill does not in any form or fashion tell someone not to pay the federal taxes as they are owed. But what we hope that this will do will convince the IRS that the state of Tennessee, when this benefit is utilized by a family with a child with disabilities, that we don't expect as Tennesseans for this to be a tax recognized and collected by the IRS. Of course, their decision trumps us on whether or not that's going to be a federal tax, but this does not affect any Tennessee tax whatsoever.
Representative Cassidy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to point out to Leader Garrett that the person who carried these individual education accounts is sitting behind you. So be careful how you treat her bill. So just be careful. I'm just warning you.
Thank you for that.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for that.
Chairman Moody's not even paying attention to me. She doesn't even know I'm talking about her. She still doesn't know.
Still doesn't understand.
That's okay, Deborah. We'll talk later.
Does anybody have any further, Representative Clemens, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make clear, I think the Mark calendar summary, I don't think adequately really covers this. The text of the legislation is just simply saying this is not taxable income, and that's a state definition of taxable income, not a federal definition of taxable income, which we don't have jurisdiction or authority to do. So I just want to make sure that was clarified for the record. And maybe the federal government will adopt our definition of taxable income. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Garrett. Thank you.
Representative Garrett,
Representative Cleaver, you're absolutely right. Thank you for that clarification.
any further questions? Chairman Reagan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just out of curiosity, did you explore the option of naming this something that would not make it obviously taxable, as in, you know, a disability benefit or some such as that?
Representative Garrett?
No, but I would absolutely consider that and would love to have that further discussion to see if we can rename the title of the bill that would give it any more push so the IRS wouldn't look at it upon as
I'm
a
talking about
taxable
if you
event.
named the benefit something else other than the benefit. Yeah, other than what its current is, so that it becomes patently clear that the state of Tennessee does not want this taxed. What you have here makes it clear, but the implication is that we're not going to tax it. We're not taxing it anyway. We want the feds not to tax it. So changing its name may have the opportunity to do that. Thank you.
Any further
Chairman-
questions? Representative Garrett?
Oh, no, I was going to say, Chairman, I'll be happy to look into that and see what I can find out before this moves forward. So I appreciate that recommendation. Thank you for that.
Any other questions?
Question on the bill.
Questions been called. Seeing no objections, we'll be voting on House Bill 1271. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. On to full education.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee.
That brings us to item number 8, House Bill 193. Do I have a motion? Properly motion. Chairman Carr, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill is brought to you today. It was a recommendation by the BEP committee. You know, some schools don't receive equal proportions in some of the things. So this bill actually states from the BEP committee that normally each school, LEA, must receive at least 25% state share in non-classroom components. But this bill, if it passes, would, it starting in the 21 and 22 school year, each LEA must receive no less than 50% state share in instructional salaries and wage components, instructional benefits components, and classroom components. And with that that would be everybody would be on a level playing field. That would help anybody that fell below the 50% mark, or 50% on those particular items, instructional salaries and all like that. And so with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the sponsor? Chairman Sapicki?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So just to clarify, Sevier County and Davidson County would be ones that would benefit from this legislation. Sevier, it's your bill, so Sevier County, they're currently going to receive roughly $2 more million from the BEP. Do you anticipate, I know you can't speak for your county commission, but are they still invested in education in Sevier County that they would maintain their funding levels?
Yes, sir. That's one thing about our county and funding levels, especially for education, when the budget comes in and it's approved by the county commission, and that budget there is set at that time.
Any other questions? Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, and just for the purposes of the record, this is not intended to reduce any maintenance of effort commitments by any local government, correct?
No, sir, it does not.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll be voting on House Bill 0193. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. On to full education.
Thank you, Chairman and committee.
Brings us to item number 9, House Bill 206. Do I have a motion? Properly motioned. Representative Cochran, you are recognized. Second. Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, so this bill, this is actually the exact language that we passed through sub and full last year. It consolidates and makes the truancy process a little bit more efficient. Right now, it's a 3-tier process. You would keep the 3 tiers, but right now it would kind of combine those existing the first and second tier. So we can kind of get in the weeds, and I'm happy to answer any questions, but essentially right now the process is very cumbersome. This should make it a little bit easier and enable those attendance supervisors to kind of step in before you've accrued so many absences. But with that, I'll yield to any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, we will be voting on House Bill 206. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Ayes have it.
Thank you, Chairman.
Full education. I'm going to roll item number 10 to the Hill and bring us to item number 11, which is off notice. And item number 12, I'm going to roll to the Hill, and I'm going to bring us back to, is it 5? All right, that brings us to item number 5, House Bill 0165 by Representative Cooper.
Motion.
Properly motioned. Representative Cooper, you are recognized on House Bill 165.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My glasses. House Bill 165 is kind of an unusual bill. It authorizes community schools of funding. There was a former bill that we passed where we allow programs, nonprofits and entities that have special programs to use private funding. Because at the time we did not have and we only dealt with the public funding, basically. So, but this bill is dealing with counselors. It authorizes the community schools funding for alcohol and abuse counselors prior to and upon release from jails, detention centers, and the bill provides for assessments, treatment plan, and individual counseling, group counseling, vocational assessments for inmates. And the purpose of this bill does about 2 or 3 things specifically. It prepares the inmate for a normal life living without dependence on alcohol and abuse, alcohol and drug, the dangers to health. They understand the dangers of health, and it also is destructive to themselves and others, including violations of the law. The counselor will provide inmates with educational training and job placement Another purpose would be to relieve the administration and deputy jailers. Those workers there are under a lot of stress, and especially during COVID this time, we had a lot of workers, deputy jailers and so forth, who were absent because of illness, and we even had some deaths there. So it relieves them from stress. It improves their job performance. It reduces the absences and reduce abuse towards inmates. And with that, I think that the councils would do a lot to help prepare these inmates for work and for living a normal life, so to say. And especially these workers who are there, who have a lot of stress upon them. With that, Mr. Chair, any questions for that, for this bill, House Bill 165? I would appreciate it.
Thank you for that explanation. Members, do you have any questions for the sponsor? Representative Clemens, you are recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate this legislation, Ms. Cooper, in its permissive nature, and I understand that it gives them the option to provide these professional counseling services to incarcerated individuals. And I understand that, mental health care and these types of things are already able to be provided. So I appreciate this legislation and the additional services, and appreciate the permissive nature of it. And I don't believe there's any appropriation of funds or a fiscal note on this legislation either, to the best of my understanding.
No, it's non-significance.
Right. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Chairman Sapicki?
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. In your bill, this is limited to community schools dealing with people that are incarcerated, trying to get them reacclimated back into society.
Yes, this is an opportunity for community schools to make an expansion if they want to.
Chairman Sapicki?
Thank you very much. And also, these community schools, if there's going to be a program created for these people that are incarcerated, that the community schools are not going to incur any cost. It'd be from outside funding.
Right. This is the private funding that I speak of, and hopefully that they'll work closely with the sheriff, the other people in corrections to help provide for these inmates who come, those who are interested in, and have the community involved and engaged.
Any further questions? Seeing none, we'll be voting on House Bill 165. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, say no. The ayes have it. On to full education.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members.
Brings us to item number 6, House Bill 528. Do I have a motion? Motion and a second. Chair Lady Moody, you are recognized. And I do believe we have an amendment with this. And I do believe that you have an amendment. Do you have that drafting code?
Lord, I shouldn't I? 4662.
It is properly motioned. This was an untimely filed amendment. We will be voting on hearing Amendment 4662. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, say no. All right, ayes have it. We will be hearing the amendment explained, 4662. Go ahead and explain your amendment, please.
All right. Thank you very much for taking this. And with the amendment, currently the portion of law governing issuance of permits and waivers to teach requires local board chairs to certify each permit or waiver application before it is sent to the department for the commissioner's approval. This requirement for local board chairs to certify each permit and waiver application forces the department to process them in paper rather than electronic form. The revisions make it optional for local board chairs to certify permit and waiver applications. This will allow applications to be processed entirely online, resulting in faster processing that will benefit teachers and districts.
You've heard the explanation of the amendment. Any questions for the sponsor on the amendment? Seeing none, we'll be voting on adopting Amendment 4662. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, say no. We are back on the bill as amended. Do you have anything else you'd like to add to explain the bill?
If I could, just a little.
Sure.
Because this bill will close the loophole that currently exists around individuals teaching on a temporary permit who commit misconduct. And all licensed teachers who commit misconduct are required in law to be reported to the State Board of Education. And I could go on, but if there's other questions, I know y'all been here a while.
Does anybody have any further questions for the sponsor on this bill? Seeing none, we will be voting on House Bill 528. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. On to full education.
Thank you, committee.
Number 10. Brings us to item number 10, House Bill 211. Do I have a motion and a second? Properly motioned. Representative Carringer, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to my fellow board members today. I bring to you House Bill 211, and this was passed unanimously last year by the House by Chairman Reagan. And then, of course, COVID stopped everything. So I'm honored to be able to bring this back this year. And what House Bill 211 is, it's about the General Assembly passed laws allowing high school students to enroll in college courses at community colleges while still in high school, or say middle college. It is possible for students to graduate high school with an associate's degree. Legislature expanded the middle college concept to Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology, TCAT. Some courses of study for professional qualifications in TCAT are enhanced by or require internships. Students in high school are under the age typically covered by workman's compensation insurance without additional expenses. Only large companies are currently willing to absorb the risk. This bill allows medium and small-sized companies to be able to hire interns without unreasonable workers' compensation insurance risk. And so this is what I'm bringing to you all. In summary, it just expands the Qualified Work-Based Learning Grant Program to include students participating in the middle college program. And as we all know, a lot of the professions, our plumbers, our electricians, our welders and all, are in desperate need of being able to hire these students to be able to come out of high school and to be able to earn a good living. So I bring this bill before you all today and ask if there's any questions anyone might have.
Thank you for that explanation. Does anybody have any questions for our sponsor? Chairman Watt, you're recognized.
Representative Carringer, did Chairman Reagan write that intro for you? It sounded just like him.
No, not exactly, but
It was very wordy, just like Chairman Reagan. It was very good.
Chairman Reagan, your name was called. Would you like to add anything? Chairman Reagan?
Yes, thank you. I just want to compliment the bill sponsor on the outstanding job she did presenting this bill.
well, thank you, Chairman Reagan. I want to thank you for continuing with your passion for this and this committee's passion that we make sure we're taking care of these high school students to be able to have a good job making a good living as soon as they're out of high school. So thank you very much.
Any further questions for the sponsors? Seeing none, without objection, we'll be voting on House Bill 211. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. On to full education. Brings us back to, this is the final. Last bill on the calendar for today, item number 12, House Bill 1233 by Chairman Zachary. Properly motioned, Chairman Zachary, you are recognized, and I believe you do have an amendment.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Motion on the amendment.
Properly motioned. What's the drafting code that you have on that?
I've got two, Mr. Chairman. I've got the one that was not timely filed, if that's the one you'd like me to move forward with, which is 4628. And then I've also got 4001.
Yeah, 4628, I believe it is untimely filed. Do I have a?
Motion to hear the bill, or amendment.
All right. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. All those opposed, say no. We will be. All right. I had to ask every now and then when sometimes I gavel too much and I have to ask. Sorry. So we will be on Amendment 4628. Would you please care to explain your amendment?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, you can never gavel too much. You can always use that gavel. Members, very simple. This legislation guarantees reasonable accommodations for all children in our public schools while also protecting all children and removing the burden of stress, removing the burden and stress of accommodation from our teachers, administrators, parents, and students. With the passage of this bill, Tennessee has a clear path forward. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. You've heard the explanation of the amendment. Any questions for the sponsor on the amendment? Seeing none, we'll be voting to adopt Amendment 4628. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, say no. We are back on the bill as amended. Chairman Zachary, you're recognized for any further comment.
No further comment, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for the sponsor on the bill? Representative Clemens, you're recognized.
Yeah, I haven't seen the late filed amendment that we just adopted, so I'm curious, what provision does it specifically amend?
Yeah, thank you, Representative Clemens. So it really is just a tightening up. It doesn't, the amendment does not change the integrity of the original bill, but it's just the tightening up and some additional language, again, that doesn't change the integrity of the bill. It just tightens up the bill and makes some sections of the bill a little more clear. I worked with TOS and the TSBA on that amendment.
Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And has the TSBA taken a formal position on this legislation?
Chairman Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. They helped draft the amendment, but I can't speak to their position.
Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I see how there's a provision in the legislation. I don't think it was amended. Now, it says in Section 4, that's where I'm referring, I think page 2. It says a public school shall provide a reasonable accommodation to a person who is unwilling to use a multi-occupancy restroom. Are there any public schools in Tennessee that don't have a single-sex restroom in addition to a multi-occupancy restroom?
Chairman Zachary.
Ask that one more time, Representative Clemens. I'm sorry.
Representative Clemens.
So with regard to Section 4, are there any public schools right now that don't have what would otherwise be described, and excuse my terminology, a single-sex restroom, male or female, in addition to a multiple occupancy restroom?
Chairman Zachary.
Oh, that don't have, not that I'm aware of. Mr. Chairman, can I be recognized again?
Yes, Chairman Zachary.
All schools, it's my understanding, all schools have at least staff restrooms that are single occupancy, is my understanding.
And so if there is a multiple occupancy restroom, then they still have the option to use that other restroom.
Chairman Zachary.
Ask it one more time.
Representative Clemens.
So if they also have a multiple occupancy restroom, which I'm guessing, what I understand this to mean is either gender or sex can use that restroom. Is that correct?
In a multi-occupancy, it would be for a single occupancy. Sorry, okay. Mr. Chairman.
And so I guess what I'm getting wrapped around the axle here is, does multiple occupancy or multi-occupancy refer to the number of urinals, or does it refer to anybody can use that restroom?
Yes.
Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, multiple occupancy restroom. The definition of restroom, the definition of restroom means a facility that includes one or more toilets or urinals.
Okay, so it's
Representative Clemens.
Okay, that clarifies my question. That's all I have. Thank you.
Does anyone have any further questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, we'll be voting on House Bill 1233. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. The ayes have it. If you'd like to be recorded as a no, make sure you check with the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee.
Does anybody have any further announcements or personal orders? Moves on to full committee. House Bill 1233 moves on to full committee. Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? So granted. We stand adjourned.